Hello everyone, it is Pete here. Today we're going to be looking at the class changes coming in patch 5.3 to Final Fantasy XIV and the classes that will be affected by them. I know it's weird having a day with the 24-hour maintenance where we all feel like we're missing out on the game, so hopefully this little bit of information and this little fix will help keep you going until the game is back up and we're all able to jump into the new patch and experience everything it's going to have to offer. So we're going to start off by looking at the changes to Warrior. These are some pretty significant ones to the way that Storm's Eye is going to work. Storm's Eye is the damage buff you get by completing your Storm's Eye combo, which increases your damage dealt. Having these changes is going to make it more reliable to keep Storm's Eye uptime, and as well change the way it works around your Berserk or inner release windows. Now the significant thing obviously is Storm's Eye and Mythal Tempest will now extend the duration by 30 seconds to a maximum of 60 seconds. This is just a nice way to extend the uptime and have to worry about using these less to keep uptime on the buff. The big bits is when it comes to Berserk and Inner Release. Activating these now has the additional effect that it will extend the Storm's Eye duration by 15 seconds to a maximum of 60. This is going to be really nice when you're looking to use those burst windows, because you no longer have to worry about it potentially falling off during the burst window. You will now have your damage buff uptime guaranteed during these, meaning you can focus more on getting out all those fell cleaves or sneaking in a couple of Storm's Paths for a little bit more damage and HP restoration. On top of all these changes to Storm's Eye, there's also a very nice little change to Nascent Flash, that it no longer requires a party member to be targeted to execute the skill. So, nice little quality of life change there. All in all, Warrior's looking pretty good in regards to these changes in Storm's Eye uptime, and I think Warrior main should hopefully be pretty happy with this just rounding out the kit and bringing it in line with a lot of the other classes where they have pretty reliable ways to keep those damage buff uptimes, and Warrior's kind of been lacking at that. Now we're just waiting for Dragoon to see these changes, hopefully soon, buddy. Moving on from Warrior, we've got Gunbreaker next. There's a very small change here for Gunbreaker, not a lot, but it's a significant one nonetheless. The cure potency on Brutal Shell is being increased from 150 to 200. The effect duration is being increased from 10 seconds to 30 seconds, and the barrier effect can now be refreshed. These are going to be really, really nice, as you're now going to get more healing and more sustain during a fight, even if it's just a 50 potency buff. I'm assuming as well this buff to the potency of the cure will also affect the potency of the shield that Brutal Shell gives you as well, as that does scale off the potency of the cure itself. So we're now looking at a 200 potency cure and a 200 potency barrier lasting up to 30 seconds. This is going to be a bit more sustain on single target fights if you're main tanking, and if you're off tanking, with the barrier effect now able to be refreshed and lasting longer, you're looking at potentially having very high uptime on that barrier through the course of a fight. As I say, small but very significant change, and if you're a Gunbreaker main like myself, hopefully you really like this. I feel it's going to be nothing but a good change and just quite nice for the class. Moving on from Gunbreaker, we've got Monk. I'm not the biggest Monk player myself, but I do know that down the line they have spoken about major Monk rework changes coming in the future. I think they spoke about that in the live letter, so hopefully these are just a stopgap or maybe a taste of what's to come with the changes. But we're getting a change to Perfect Balance with a reduced recast time, down from 120 seconds to 90 seconds, as well as additional effects on Form Shift, where extending the duration of Greased Lightning will no longer require you to be in Coil form. As I say, nothing too major for Monk, but hopefully these are maybe an indicator of what's to come in a full rework, or these might just be a stopgap to help the class a little bit until we get to see the full rework come down the line. Moving on from Monk, we're going to be looking at Bard. Now, Bard has been suffering DPS-wise for a little bit. It does obviously fall under the support tax, where because it brings a lot of party utility, it does lose out on its personal damage, though it has definitely been on the lower end, so it's getting some buffs. We've got a buff to Burst Shot and Refulgent Arrow. Both of these are getting a 10 potency increase. These are both skills you use a lot during a fight. They're a big part of your rotation. So seeing this little buff, while it's only 10 potency on each, it will add up over the course of a fight and hopefully lead to some much more significant damage over the course of, say, let's say a 10-minute Savage fight. You're going to be seeing that small potency increase really stack up and up and up and up. On top of these baseline spell potency increases, we're also seeing a buff to Sidewinder. Sidewinder is the skill you use when you've got both your dots on a target. When you use Sidewinder, it will do damage scaling if you have both of the dots applied. The potency of this is going from 300 up to 350. It's a nice wee 50 potency buff, and will hopefully also help add some more to Bard's total DPS during a fight. There's still obviously pretty insignificant changes, or pretty small changes in the big picture of things, but it'll be cool to see how these changes affect Bard and what it does to its performance. I know from some feedback I've heard, people might be looking or wanting more, and maybe we will get more down the line. But for now, this is a very nice little just overall change to the class's DPS, giving it a little lift during a fight. Moving on from Bard to the next range physical, we've got Machinist. There's literally no changes here whatsoever other than a tooltip change. If you were hoping for some major buffs, I'm afraid this is not the patch for you. So we'll move swiftly onwards to Summoner. Now, Summoner has been one of the kings of DPS recently. High damage, good utility with a party damage buff, good utility with a res, decent mobility, very hard hitting spells, and the ability to literally summon your own little dragon, which will block the field of view of all your party members. It's in a very, very good spot. So something had to happen to maybe bring it a little bit more back in line with the rest of the classes, and I think this is what they've aimed to do with the Tri-Disaster change. Tri-Disaster is getting a potency reduction from 300 down to 150. This isn't earth-shatteringly massive, but it is significant enough that it's going to be a noticeable decrease in DPS. I've had some discussions with some friends of mine who main Summoner, and the ranging opinions have sort of been across the board for what they were expecting. Some were thinking more significant potency changes, maybe even losing it altogether. But I think a split from 300 down to 150 is enough to lower Summoner a little bit without completely gutting the use of the spell. Obviously, it would still refresh your dots, but having a potency of its own when it is being used is a very, very nice thing. I think without it would have probably been too much, so 150 seems to hit the mark. And all in all, Summoner's still going to be pretty good. I don't think this is really going to hurt it majorly, and I think Summoner mains can probably be understanding of this change, while also not losing out on too much, and be happy that their class is still going to be putting out big damage and doing fantastically. Moving on from Summoner, we've got Scholar. Scholar's got a little wee change here. We are seeing a mana point cost reduction on Succor, down from 1300 to 1100. Nothing major. It's your AoE GCD heal. It gives everyone a bit of healing and everyone a shield. Seeing this change, it's nothing to really write home about, but it's also nothing to complain about. It's a nice little free 200 extra mana you're saving every time you cast it. I think it's going to go across very well, honestly. But moving on to the next healer we're going to talk about, and some much more significant changes, we're looking at Astrologian. Now, this is where the big changes are coming in this patch. Astro has always had its mana issues. I've been playing a little bit of Astro recently to get a feel for it, and I can definitely say it has been noticeable that it doesn't do as well with mana as White Mage or Scholar. So, Square Enix have really dove into the kit and made some pretty significant changes to try and alleviate that burden of mana usage on longer fights for Astro. So they've started off with Lightspeed. The effect that it reduces the mana cost for spells by 50% has been completely removed from the skill. This skill will now only be used to help reduce your cast times to give you instant casts. If you're in an intense situation where you need to weave in heals, or you want to have the mobility of being able to move about without your cast times, that's now going to be the use for Lightspeed, but it is no longer your mana reduction skill. To compensate for this, there's been two major sets of changes to the mana usage and mana restoration on the rest of Astro's kit. Firstly, a lot of skills have had their mana point costs reduced. Helios is down from 900 to 700, as is Benefic 2. For Aspected Benefic, when in Diurnal Sect, the cost has been reduced from 500 to 400, and when in Nocturnal Sect, it's been reduced from 900 to 700. Then, Aspected Helios has seen its cost reduced from 1000 to 800, and Combust 2 has seen its cost reduced from 500 to 400. Just reductions across the board to help make a lot of these spells less costly and make them chunk less of your mana when using them. As I said with Scholar, always hard to argue with mana point cost reductions. I think this is a very nice little change. Now the big thing, which I am personally very happy about, from a thematic style of Astro, is that now every time you draw a card, you're going to get 8% of your maximum mana back. So every 30 seconds, 8% maximum mana is going to be returned to you. I think this is a very nice way to give Astro its own Ether Flow style class-specific mana restoration system that's going to reward you for drawing your cards and using that part of your kit as efficiently and as effectively as possible to get the most out of that mana restoration as well as the damage buffs that the cards will be given. So for me, big fan of this change, definitely like the way they've gone with that method of mana restoration. Moving past regular draw, we now get to sleeve draw. Sleeve draw has been completely revamped and it now works as follows. Sleeve draw will now draw a card from your divining deck. Just one singular card. This one card will not align with any of your current seals of Arcana. If you have all three seals, however, any card may be drawn. This means that if you're doing your opener, or you're in a situation where you're fishing for that perfect third card to get your 3 different seals and get a 6% divination out, you can now do so with sleeve draw. From a gameplay standpoint, this seems like a really nice change to make sure that an astrologian can line up their seals to get that perfect damage buff for their party. Though I do also know thematically this does step away from the whole divining the cards and finding the right one kind of system. So I can see why there are pros and cons to this, and I've heard some feedback from people in both directions saying, well, from a gameplay standpoint this is fantastic, but from a thematic standpoint it does stray away from what Astro is about. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on this and see what your thoughts are, because for me, I'm definitely more of a gameplay focused kind of person, so I like this change, but I do see the merits of the discussion in the other way as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of constructive feedback to this and potentially more refinements to it in the future. On top of all those changes, sleeve draw is also getting the same effect as draw, where it's going to restore 8% of your maximum mana points every time you use it. So again, just more methods of helping Astro manage their mana and not bottom out and keep on top of that. Past all of those changes, a couple of quick changes to Horoscope and Neutral Sect. Horoscope is getting a healing effect, will now also be triggered when the effect of Horoscope or Horoscope Helios expires. And for Neutral Sect, when Neutral Sect is executed while Nocturnal Sect is active, the healing over time effects of both Aspected Benefic and Aspected Helios can now be stacked. So, nice little buff to Neutral Sect, stacking the healing. All in all, I think these are some really nice changes for Astro. I don't think they're perfect. I think especially with the sleeve draw thing, there'll be a lot of discussion about how Astro mains feel about it, whether they're going to like it or not. But I think this is a step, big step, in the right direction for Astro in helping it manage its mana and making the kit flow a little bit more nicely. So, very excited to see how Astro is going to perform after these changes. I've been leveling mine a lot recently. Very excited to play more of it after these changes and see how the class feels. Anyway, that about wraps it up for all the class changes coming in patch 5.3. I'm a big fan of them. I think there's some really cool stuff in here, and I'm excited to see how it's going to affect a few of the classes and how they're going to perform afterwards. I wasn't expecting the warrior buffs to come out of left field, but they do look really good, and I'm very excited to play some more warrior because of it. Anyway, like I say, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you guys will enjoy these changes when you get into the game and get to try them all out for yourselves. Tell me which one you guys are looking forward to the most. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope you enjoy the new patch when it lands. And thank you very much for your time.